Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of total precision.
Absolutely. It's almost like engineering.
Right, exactly like engineering. Like you break your arm and the x-ray shows that jagged white line and the doctor just points at it and says, there it is.
Yeah, it's broken or not broken, very clean.
It's completely binary and it's comforting.
Right, because we like things to be visible. We want them neatly categorized so we can just, apply a specific targeted fix, put a cast on it, give it 6 weeks, and you're good.
But then you step into the world of psychological collapse. Or, in the case of our deep dive today, the moral, spiritual, and just total systemic collapse of an entire galactic society.
Yeah, suddenly that X-ray machine is utterly useless.
Completely useless.
Yeah,
We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is just incredibly murky because you have to ask, how do you diagnose the death of a golden age?
you really can't look for a single physical fracture. It doesn't work that way.
No, you're looking for like a million microscopic stress fractures, fractures in ideology, in leadership, in these deep brotherly bonds that suddenly just all at once bring the whole massive structure down.
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters.
Is
I mean, truly. And that is exactly where we find ourselves with Graham McNeil's novel, False Gods.
such an intense book.
It really is. We are standing at the absolute tipping point of the Horus heresy narrative here.
Right, because if you look at Dan Abnett's preceding book, Horus Rising,
This was the soaring, optimistic peak of the Great Crusade, right?
exactly, it showed us the absolute pinnacle of human achievement. The secular philosophy is working, everything is great.
But then this book, False Gods, it's the stomach-dropping moment where you realize the roller coaster has crested the track.
And it is in a sheer vertical freefall.
A total freefall.
So let's get right into it, because our mission for you today is to figure out exactly how the galaxy's greatest champion, the War Master Horus, was actually corrupted.
Yeah, how does a mind that brilliant, a leader that charismatic, fall so completely?
Right, and we can't just look at the man himself. Because if you want to understand the fall of a great leader, you have to examine the cracks in the foundation of the society around him first.
Yeah, always have to look at the environment.
Always. And that brings us to the incredibly vulnerable, fragile state of the 63rd expedition right at the start of this narrative.
Fragile is the perfect word, even if it seems kind of contradictory when you're discussing a literal fleet of world-conquering Astartes.
Right. Fragile and Space Marine don't usually go together.
They really don't.
No.
But we open in the tragic, bloody aftermath of the Interrex incident from the last book,
Uh-huh.
and the 63rd expedition, which is Horus's primary fleet, is reeling.
But it's not just a military thing, right?
No, I want to be very clear about why they are reeling. This wasn't a military setback. Astartes can handle military setbacks all day long. This was an ontological shock.
A total shattering of their worldview. Because the Interrex represented something that the imperial truth absolutely insisted was impossible.
Precisely. Because, think about it, the Imperium operates on this militant secularism, a very brutal realism.
Compliance or annihilation?
Exactly. They conquer the galaxy under the strict dogma that humanity alone is meant to rule the stars, that all alien life is inherently hostile and untrustworthy, and crucially, that there are no gods.
Right. No magic, no supernatural forces.
Just science, reason, and human manifest destiny. But then they meet the Interrex.
And the Interrex are basically the mirror universe version of what they could have been.
Yeah. A highly advanced, flourishing human civilization that has successfully and peacefully integrated with alien species.
Which already breaks the imperial rules.
It breaks all the rules. And worse, it's a civilization that actually knows about chaos. They understand the warp as a malicious, sentient dimension, and they actively guard against it.
Whereas the Imperium just pretends it's bad weather in space.
Pretty much. So the Imperium's philosophy is so rigid, they don't have the diplomatic or philosophical vocabulary for integration at all.
So when peace with the Interrex falls apart, which it does, catastrophically, and it ends in a massacre, the Astartes don't just feel bad about the bloodshed.
No, Astartes are built for bloodshed.
Right. They feel this profound existential doubt about their own crusade. Like, was it all a lie? Are we actually the bad guys here?
And that's the stress fracture we're talking about, that exact doubt.
And it doesn't help that this philosophical doubt is compounding a much deeper, much more personal psychological wound, which is the Emperor's absence.
Oh, the absence is massive.
Yeah.
The Emperor of Mankind is abruptly returned to Terra, handed the title of War Master to Horus, and effectively locked himself in his basement.
Without telling anyone what he's working on.
Not a single word.
I try to think of this like a wildly successful startup where the visionary founder suddenly leaves the team entirely on their own right after a massive, very public PR disaster.
That is a great way to look at it.
Like, the CEO just packs up, goes back to headquarters, and outright refuses to answer calls.
And of course, the middle management is going to panic.
Exactly. The guidance counselor is gone, the safety net is completely gone, and the company culture starts getting toxic really fast.
But you have to remember, with the Primarchs, it's amplified by a million, because they are literally genetically engineered to seek his approval.
It's baked into their DNA.
Yeah, your startup analogy actually touches on something vital here, which is the cult of personality.
Oh, absolutely.
The Emperor, despite his absolute insistence that he is just a man, was the unifying gravitational focal point of this entire galactic conquest.
He was the sun they all orbited.
Right. For transhuman beings who were created for the sole purpose of waging his war, his physical presence gave their existence meaning.
So when he leaves, he doesn't just leave a military vacuum.
No, he leaves a psychological and emotional void. The soldiers and the civilians attached to the fleet are suddenly asking, why are we doing this?
Who are we doing this for if the father figure has abandoned us?
Exactly. And then the human bureaucrats on the Council of Terra start stepping in to give orders instead, which just infuriates the Astartes even further.
Who are you to tell me what to do? Right. So you have a society stripped of its absolute leader, deeply questioning its core philosophy, and dealing with the trauma of a war that suddenly feels really unjust.
It's a powder keg.
And human nature abhors a vacuum. If the official secular truth isn't providing comfort, people will inevitably invent something that does.
And we see this toxicity and desperation manifest as these deeply destructive coping mechanisms, particularly among the remembrancers.
The artists and poets.
Right, the civilian artists, poets, and historians attached to the expedition. They were brought along to document the glory of the crusade, to celebrate the pinnacle of rational human achievement.
And instead, they are just totally falling apart.
Completely breaking down.
Yeah.
Because they're baseline humans processing horrors that even transhumans are struggling with.
You look at Ignace Carcassy, the poet, he just spirals into heavy substance abuse.
Yeah, drinking himself into a stupor just to numb the cognitive dissonance.
And then you have Euphrates Keeler, the imagist, the photographer. She goes the complete opposite route.
She starts desperately searching for a spiritual framework to explain the absolute terror of the warp that she witnessed.
Right, and she finds it in the Lectitio Divinitatis.
A completely forbidden text.
Highly illegal in this society. But it makes a terrifying kind of sense when you think about it, because the imperial truth forces an incredibly brittle worldview.
It really does. It's like building a massive, imposing fortress of logic, but refusing to put a roof on it because you officially deny that rain exists.
That's a perfect analogy, because when the literal malignant entities from the warp, the demons of chaos, start pouring in, their rational minds simply break.
The secular creed fails to provide any defense at all. No armor for the soul.
It's like stripping away a society's immune system, dropping them into a biohazard zone, and telling them viruses are just a myth.
They don't even have the vocabulary to describe what is attacking them.
So they direct this burgeoning, desperate faith toward the only entity powerful enough to serve as a bulwark against the dark, which is the supreme irony, right?
They start worshiping the very man who burned down their churches, the emperor himself.
It's wild. But the burgeoning cult of the emperor is one of the most fascinating thematic elements McNeill explores here.
You have this immense contrast. On one side, the Astartes, who still largely view the emperor merely as a great man, a brilliant geneticist and a peerless warlord.
And on the other side, the fragile, terrified human civilians who are beginning to worship him as a literal omnipotent god.
Because they need a protector. Out of sheer psychological desperation, they elevate him to divine status.
And right in the middle of this massive ideological civil war is Garfield Loken.
Our anchor.
Yeah, he's trying so hard to hold on to the brutal realism, the secular truth, while everyone around him, human and Astartes alike, is slowly losing their minds.
And Loken really represents the ideal of the Great Crusade, doesn't he? He's noble, rational, fiercely loyal, but also capable of profound philosophical thought.
But even Loken is struggling to reconcile the reality of the warp with the atheistic dogma he was raised on.
Because the foundation is literally crumbling beneath his feet. And if we connect this atmosphere of vulnerability, ideological confusion, and this desperate searching for meaning to the overarching plot.
It's the perfect setup.
It is the absolute perfect breeding ground for a manipulator. A society this fracture doesn't need to be conquered. It just needs a slight push to completely shatter.
Which brings us to the guy who sees all these microscopic stress fractures and decides, you know what, I'm going to bring a sledgehammer.
Oh, yes. Enter First Chaplain Erebus of the Word-Bearers.
Let's really unpack this guy, the architect of the ruin, because Erebus isn't just a bystander taking advantage of a bad situation.
No, no. Erebus is the active, cold, calculating architect of the heresy. He is manipulating events, logistics, and psychology to ensure the fall of the War Master.
And his title, Chaplain, is deeply significant here.
It's so ironic.
It really is. It's wild to think about a chaplain in a militant atheist army. Like, what was his official job supposed to be?
Well, originally within the Space Marine Legions, a chaplain was an enforcer of the Emperor's secular truth.
An atheist chaplain.
Exactly. Their role was to maintain martial pride, discipline, and absolute ideological purity. But Erebus's legion, the Word-Bearers, are entirely different.
Because they have a huge secret.
They have secretly, systematically fallen to chaos decades prior.
They are deeply religious, fanatical zealots who have embraced the primordial truth of the dark gods of the warp.
So Erebus is essentially a sleeper agent. He's an apex predator embedded directly into Horus's inner circle.
So he's just hanging around, acting like a trusted, wise advisor. He's got the ear of the War Master, but he's secretly plotting the downfall of the entire galaxy.
And what strikes me is how incredibly specific his plot is.
Right. He doesn't just want to assassinate Horus.
No, because an assassination would just make Horus a martyr and actually solidify the Imperium.
Erebus wants to corrupt him. He wants to turn the greatest weapon of the Emperor against the Emperor.
And to do that,
Right.
he orchestrates the theft of a very specific, terrifying weapon from the Interrex, the anathema.
The theft of the anathemen from the Hall of Devices is the catalyst for literally everything that follows. Let's delve into the mechanics of this weapon, because it highlights the exact philosophical blind spot of the Imperium we were just discussing.
Right, because the anathema isn't just a physically sharp sword. It's a sentient, supernatural weapon forged by the Kinbroch, which is an alien race the Interrex integrated.
And the Imperium looks at it and just sees, like, advanced metallurgy.
Because they don't believe in magic.
But it's actually sympathetic magic. So how does it work? How does a sword learn who to kill?
It operates on the principle of the true name, which is a classic occult concept that the Imperial truth completely, utterly denies.
Right.
The weapon can be conceptually bonded to a specific victim. It requires the wielder to focus on the target, to name them, to essentially feed the weapon the spiritual and biological resonance of the intended prey.
And once it has that name...
And once it has that, the weapon actively adapts. It alters its own molecular structure and its esoteric poisons to become the absolute perfect, lethal countermeasure to that specific individual's biology.
Even the biology of a demigod Primarch.
Even a Primarch.
That is utterly terrifying. You can't armor yourself against it because it evolves to bypass whatever armor you have.
Exactly.
So Erebus steals this weapon, burns down the museum to cover his tracks, which, by the way, directly causes the catastrophic war with the Interrex.
A totally calculated move on his part.
And then he purposefully leaves the anathema in the hands of Eugen Temba, a planetary governor he knows Horus will eventually fight. He is setting a highly specific supernatural trap.
He is. But this raises a fascinating debate regarding Erebus's character, one that readers have argued about for years.
Oh, the 4D chess debate.
Yes. Is Erebus actually a master strategist playing 4D chess? Did he foresee every single troop movement, every emotional reaction, every political consequence years in advance?
Or is he just an opportunist, exploiting a society that's already collapsing under its own weight and just taking credit for the chaos?
Right. What's your take?
I have to push back on the 4D chess idea. I really do. I don't buy that he's an omniscient genius. It feels too convenient.
Why is that?
Well, he didn't create the Emperor's absence. He didn't make the imperial truth so brittle. He didn't create the human need for faith that Keeler is experiencing.
That's true.
He's just surfing a wave of existing institutional decay. He's incredibly observant, yes, but he's weaponizing vulnerabilities that were already there.
I think that's a very fair assessment, and it really speaks to his immense moral complexity as an antagonist.
Yeah.
Because he genuinely believes that the ends justify any means. He is willing to sacrifice billions of lives, betray his brothers, and unleash literal hell on the galaxy because he believes serving the Chaos Gods is the ultimate, inevitable truth of the universe.
So he doesn't need to be omniscient. He just needs to know exactly which buttons to push on the people around him.
Exactly. And there is a really striking literary comparison that critics often make regarding Erebus here.
Oh, the psychopomp thing.
Yes. They compare him to a psychopomp, the mythological guide of souls like Charon ferrying the dead across the river Styx. But specifically, they liken him to Jacob Marley from Dickens' A Christmas Carol.
It's a brilliant, highly accurate comparison. Think about the role of Jacob Marley.
Right.
He is the ghostly figure, bound in chains of his own making, who comes to Ebenezer Scrooge. But Marley doesn't force Scrooge to change. He doesn't possess him.
No, he just acts as a guide.
Right. He initiates the journey, curating the visions of the past, present, and future. And Erebus plays exactly that role for Horus.
He doesn't cast a mind control spell on the War Master. He just guides Horus toward his own spiritual death by showing him carefully curated visions, stoking the fires of his existing resentments.
He is the usher into the underworld.
Absolutely.
But here's the thing. A trap, even a perfectly laid trap by a demonic Jacob Marley, only works if the prey actually walks into it.
Right, you have to take the bait.
And Horus is a demigod. He is a brilliant tactician, the greatest general in human history, known for his diplomacy and his measured thinking. Why on earth would he fall for this?
It seems crazy from the outside.
It does. Why would he walk directly into a trap set by a rebel planetary governor on a backwater swamp planet?
Because Erebus didn't build a trap for Horus's intellect. He built a trap for his ego.
Pride. The oldest, most reliable downfall in human history.
It never fails.
Which leads us to the catalyst for the actual physical blow. The 63rd expedition gets diverted. They end up at this feral, backward, rotting swamp world called Davin.
Now, Davin is a world that Horus had personally brought into compliance decades earlier.
It's his project.
Exactly. He left an imperial garrison behind, commanded by a man named Eugen Temba. But Erebus, constantly whispering poison in the War Master's ear, warns Horus that Temba has gone rogue.
He tells Horus that Temba has rebelled, claimed Davin's moon as his own sovereign territory, and is actively mocking the Imperium.
And this news entirely short-circuits Horus's brain.
Oh, completely. Because to him, this isn't just a minor rebellion. It is a profound, intolerable personal insult.
He feels like his honor is being dragged through the mud.
Right. He conquered this world. He personally installed Temba. And now this baseline human is spitting in his face. The narcissism flares up instantly.
It's huge. The theme of the nature of leadership is front and center in this sequence. We see exactly how immense power and unyielding pride corrupt the decision-making process.
Totally.
Horus's reaction is entirely driven by a feeling of betrayal and a monstrous wounded ego. His inner circle of advisors, the Mornival, which includes Garviel Loken, Ezekiel Abaddon, Tarak Torgadon, and Little Horus Aximand, they all urge caution.
Because they're seasoned veterans.
Right. They look at this situation and say, this is a trap. It's a pointless, petty skirmish beneath the dignity of the War Master. Let's just bomb the moon from orbit or send a specialized strike force.
But he ignores them. He completely shucks down the counsel of the 4 people he supposedly trusts the most in the entire galaxy.
He dresses them down, basically questions their courage, and insists on leading the spearhead attack personally.
What an attack it is. Let's talk about the sensory details of the battle on Davin's moon, because McNeil's writing here is just visceral.
The battle sequences on Davin's moon are highly praised, and for very good reason. It is a masterclass in atmospheric degradation.
It's not lasers and spaceships.
No, this isn't a glorious, shining sci-fi battle of lasers and pristine armor. It's grueling, horrific swamp warfare.
Yeah.
The Astartes, these towering, genetically perfected super soldiers who usually fight on the grandest stages, are dragging themselves through thick, rotting mud.
Fighting in a foul, diseased environment where the very air corrodes their ceramite plating.
It's absolutely disgusting.
You have these massive Luna wolves hacking their way through dense, unnatural fog, fighting off giant plague toads and hordes of shambling, rotting zombies.
It's such a stark visual representation of the moral corruption that is about to overtake them. They are literally sinking into the muck.
And right in the middle of this rotting swamp, inside a crashed and corrupted flagship, Horus finally confronts his former commander, Eugen Temba.
And Temba isn't just a rebel anymore. He's been physically mutated by the warp, completely bloated and grotesque.
And, exactly as Erebus planned, Temba is wielding the stolen anathema.
Erebus's trap springs shut.
They duel. And despite Horus being an invincible demigod, Temba manages to land a blow.
Just a single scratch, really, but it's enough.
Horus is mortally wounded by the supernatural blade. It slices right through his master-crafted armor and poisons his very soul.
He is reduced to a state hovering right on the verge of death. But I want to pause here because this brings up a massive point of debate within the community, often referred to as the hot-headed Horus critique.
Yes, the abrupt shift in characterization.
Right. A lot of readers felt that this sudden shift from the thoughtful, measured, almost philosophical statesman we saw in Horus Rising to this rash, aggressive, pride-blinded commander on Davin feels jarring.
Like, is Graham McNeill just writing him out of character to force the plot forward? Or is this a realistic depiction of what happens when a massive overachiever's ego is threatened?
It is a fantastic debate, and you can absolutely argue that the pacing feels abrupt. We spent hundreds of pages in the first book seeing Horus as the ultimate diplomat.
And then within a few chapters here, he's throwing a tantrum, ignoring his advisors, and rushing headlong into a cursed swamp.
However, if you look at it through the lens of psychological trauma and the specific pressure cooker he's in, that sudden snap becomes much more believable.
How so? Like, what's the psychological angle there?
Think about narcissistic collapse. High-functioning individuals, especially those carrying immense responsibility, often don't slowly degrade. They hold the facade together perfectly, meticulously managing their image until they encounter a highly specific trigger that hits their deepest, most hidden insecurity.
Wow, okay.
When that happens, the carefully constructed persona shatters all at once. For Horus, he is dealing with the trauma of the Emperor abandoning him, the crushing, impossible weight of leading the entire Great Crusade, the existential doubt from the Interrex, and the subtle, continuous poisoning of his mind by Erebus.
He is a raw nerve.
Exactly. Temba's betrayal wasn't just a rebellion, it was a mirror showing Horus that his legacy might be a failure. He lashed out violently to smash the mirror.
I completely buy that. I mean, he's carrying the weight of the galaxy. His dad just left him the keys to the Empire without leaving an instruction manual. And the very first thing that happens is someone scratches the paint on his favorite world.
He loses it.
It's the straw that breaks the camel's back, and the ripple effect of his injury. It is devastating.
Let's talk about the Mournival's reaction. Because when Horus falls, his inner circle absolutely loses their minds.
The texts describe their reaction as being beyond terror, and we have to really analyze the psychology of an Astartes to understand why this is so profound.
Right, because they aren't supposed to feel terror. Not at all. Astartes are biologically engineered and psycho-indoctrinated to be immune to fear. They face alien monstrosities, orbital bombardments, and overwhelming odds without blinking. Their heart rates barely elevate.
But the thought of losing their Primarch, their genetic father?
It completely breaks their conditioning. Their world literally stops. They lose every ounce of rationality and strategic thinking.
There is this incredibly vivid, horrifying detail that perfectly illustrates this breakdown. To get the dying Horus back to their medical bay, the apothecary, the Mournival, are in such an absolute primal panic that they run through the halls of the flagship, and these massive armored space marines literally trample over human civilians.
It is one of the most chilling scenes in the book. It represents a profound shattering of their noble ideals.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the Astartes were created to be the protectors of humanity. That is their core mandate, the foundation of their honor. But in this moment of supreme crisis, when their father figure is threatened, the baseline humans become nothing more than meat in the hallway.
Just obstacles.
Yes. The Astartes crush the very people they were sworn to protect just to save themselves from the agonizing psychological pain of losing Horus. It shows exactly how fragile the moral superiority of the Imperium truly is when push comes to shove.
It strips away all the propaganda. When the chips are down, transhumans only care about transhumans.
Exactly.
And it sets up the tragedy perfectly because they get him to the medical bay, they lay him on the table, and nothing works.
Nothing.
The apothecaries try every advanced medical technique known to the Imperium, but medical science, the absolute pinnacle of the Imperium's rational secular technology, cannot heal a supernatural wound.
Because the anathema isn't just a physical poison, it's a metaphysical one. It is unmaking him on a conceptual level.
And this is the definitive, undeniable failure of the imperial truth. The science and reason they have worshipped, the foundation of their entire worldview, has failed them in their darkest hour.
And human history tells us exactly what happens when science fails to save the person you love most. Desperation opens the door to darker, forbidden solutions. You will try anything.
Enter Erebus. Again,
Right on cue.
playing the concerned friend perfectly.
Yeah.
Like, hey guys, is the secular science failing you? I know a guy, or rather a place. He steps up and convinces the desperate, weeping Mournival to take the dying Horus down to the surface of Davin, to a place called the Temple of the Serpent Lodge.
And this is the point of no return.
Yeah.
This is where the physical wound transitions into a spiritual one. The Mournival, particularly Abaddon and Aximand, are entirely compromised by grief and fear.
They aren't thinking straight.
No, they agree to hand their Primarch, the War Master of the Imperium, over to local, unsanctioned priests. Loken vehemently opposes it, of course, recognizing it as witchcraft, but he is overruled by the desperation of his brothers.
So they carry him into this dark, incense-choked temple, and a ritual is performed. But this isn't some holistic herbal remedy.
Far from it.
This is a dark, occult ritual that projects Horus's mind out of his dying body and directly into the chaotic spirit world.
Let's discuss how the warp actually corrupts a mind here, because it's important. It's not a simple magical spell that overrides your free will.
Right.
The warp reacts to psychic resonance and emotional state. It's a funhouse mirror that reflects and amplifies your deepest fears, ambitions, and insecurities.
So when Horus enters the warp, his defenses are completely down.
He is physically agonizing, spiritually poisoned by the anathema, and burdened by a massive superiority complex.
Which brings us to arguably the most famous sequence in the book, the Christmas Carol in the Warp. Horus is essentially taken on this dark, twisted, hallucinatory tour of Imperium future, Imperium past, and Imperium present.
The literary parallels are explicitly acknowledged in the narrative structure. But instead of the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, Horus gets Erebus.
But Erebus is cunning. He knows Horus distrusts him, so he doesn't appear as himself in the warp. He disguises his spiritual avatar to look like Hastur Sejanus.
And for context, Sejanus was Horus's absolute closest friend. He was the perfect Luna Wolf, Horus's favorite son, who was tragically murdered right before the events of the first book.
So Erebus is literally wearing the face of Horus's dead best friend to maximize the emotional manipulation. It is so deeply, unfathomably cynical.
It is the ultimate violation of trust. As the false Sejanus, Erebus guides Horus through these visions, and the visions are an absolute masterclass in psychological leverage.
He curates the museum of Horus's insecurities.
Exactly. They see the Emperor's secret laboratory on Terra, where the Primarchs were created in test tubes and then scattered across the galaxy. Horus witnesses the Emperor creating them not as beloved sons, but as tools, as weapons of war.
Which feeds right into Horus's growing resentment that the Emperor doesn't love him. But the most critical vision, the one that truly breaks him, is a glimpse of the 40th millennium 10,000 years in the future.
Imagine being Horus in that moment. You are a hardcore, rational atheist. You have spent centuries bleeding across the stars, burning down temples, and executing priests to enforce a secular, enlightened universe.
Yeah.
And this ghost of your best friend shows you a future where your own father, the Emperor, has forced the entire universe to worship him as a deity.
It's the ultimate psychological whiplash. He sees a shrine world, a planet entirely dedicated to religious fanaticism. He sees the imperial Aquila, the symbol of secular logic and reason, transformed into a holy cross.
He sees uncounted billions of humans living in squalor, praying to the Emperor.
And the false Sejanus tells him this was the Emperor's grand plan all along. He doesn't care about humanity. He just wants to achieve godhood, and he desires the limitless power of the chaos gods for himself.
He is shown hellish industrial wastelands, human misery on an unimaginable scale, and crucially, amidst the statues of the Emperor and the Primarchs who remain loyal, Horus notes his own absence.
Oh, that part is so perfectly targeted.
He sees statues of Rogel Dorn, of Robut Guilliman, but none of himself. He and the legions who fought the hardest are forgotten.
And to twist the knife further, he sees wolves with the imperial Aquila on their fur. A clear metaphor for the space wolves, another legion, acting as the Emperor's unthinking executioners.
It's showing Horus that he and his brothers are just disposable tools, entirely replaceable, destined for the scrap heap once the Emperor ascends to godhood.
The visions are perfectly surgically tailored to appeal directly to his two greatest weaknesses, his towering ambition and his paralyzing fear of obsolescence.
He is shown a future where he is forgotten, where his sacrifices meant absolutely nothing, and where his father is a tyrannical, hypocritical god.
And then the false Sejanus delivers the pitch. You are the only one who can stop this. You must stand up to your father to save humanity from this fate, accept the power of the warp, and take his place.
And here's the brilliant paradox of the entire sequence. As the reader, you know that the future Horus is seeing is real.
Wait, really? It's not a fake vision.
No. The 40th millennium is a fanatical, hellish, decaying shrine world where the emperor is worshipped as a god. Erebus isn't lying about the destination, but he is lying about the cause.
Ah, I see.
He is telling Horus, this is the emperor's plan. When in reality, the 40th millennium is the nightmare that happens because Horus rebels.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy wrapped in a hallucination. Erebus shows him the devastating consequences of the heresy, but frames it as the reason the heresy must happen. It's mind-bending. But we have to ask, does Horus buy it?
Well, we know his brother Magnus the Red actually breaches the warp during this sequence to try and warn Horus, to tell him Erebus is lying.
Right. Magnus tries to stop it. So does Horus realize it's a trick?
That is the tragic crux of the matter. Horus realizes it's Erebus. He sees through the disguise of Sejanus.
He does.
Yes. He knows he's being manipulated by beings of the warp. He isn't mind-controlled. But because he is stripped of his rational defenses, suffering from a poisoned soul, and desperately, aggressively clinging to his own ego, he chooses to believe the lie.
He aligns with chaos not out of blind devotion, but out of sheer hubris.
He believes he is strong enough to use the chaos gods as tools to overthrow the emperor without being corrupted himself.
He thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. He decides he will take his father's place on the throne to save the galaxy, completely blind to the fact that he is putting on the puppet strings himself.
And when he wakes up on the altar in the Serpent Lodge, the Horus we knew is dead. The text says he returns from the temple a completely changed being.
There's no hesitation anymore. He immediately begins to clean house.
The shift is absolute. The tragedy has occurred. He starts secretly identifying the Astartes in his own ranks, who possess too much honor, too much loyalty to the Emperor guys, like our hero Garviel Loken and Tarik Torgadon, and plotting exactly how to dispose of them.
He declares to his new inner circle of conspirators his intention to move against the Emperor. The die is cast, and they set their sights on the Istvan system, which will become the site of the most infamous betrayal and massacre in galactic history.
So we have to pull back and look at what this all means for the reader. We have this massive, universe-breaking narrative shift. The greatest hero of humanity becomes its greatest villain.
This is the pivot point for an intellectual property that spans hundreds of books, tabletop games, and decades of intricate lore. How did fans and critics actually react to Graham McNeil's execution of this monumental, incredibly difficult moment?
The critical reception of False Gods is deeply mixed, and it occupies a very difficult, highly debated space in the fandom. It is universally recognized as absolutely essential reading.
You simply cannot understand the Horus heresy or the setting of Warhammer 40,000 without it.
The political schemes, the manipulation deftly interwoven here, are the engine for the entire massive franchise. But as a piece of literature, it is frequently compared, often unfavorably, to Dan Abnett's preceding masterpiece, Horus Rising.
Let's break down the scorecard. What did people love? Because there are some very strong positives.
The overarching plot and the narrative momentum are widely praised. For many readers, the sheer pacing of False Gods makes it a more compelling, page-turning read than the first book.
McNeil is highly celebrated for his ability to capture the monumental, terrifying scale of war, too.
That swamp battle on Davin we discussed is consistently highlighted as a gritty, unforgettable sequence that grounds these invincible demigods in real, visceral, filthy danger.
And the Christmas Carol sequence in the Warp. Even if you debate the logic of Horus's motivations, the actual imagery of that sequence, the ghost of Sejanus, the haunting vision of the shrine world, the psychological horror of the laboratory, is universally considered a powerful, memorable centerpiece of the entire series.
Additionally, McNeil manages a very difficult baton pass. Taking over characters established by another author is notoriously difficult.
But the transition from Abnett's voice to his own is generally seen as seamless in terms of character continuity.
The story flows naturally, and he continues the tragic development of key figures like Loken and Torgadon brilliantly. Loken remains this incredibly sympathetic, increasingly isolated anchor for the reader.
Okay, but then we have the weaknesses. And critics don't pull any punches here. The prose itself takes a pretty significant hit.
Yes, the critical consensus is that McNeil's prose, particularly in this specific volume, is noticeably less polished and less evocative than Abnett's poetic style.
Reviewers pointed out structural clunkiness, repetitive phrasing, and even multiple typos in the original text, which severely detracted from the immense mythic gravity of the story being told.
And there's a major complaint about sheer volume. The dramatis personae, the cast of characters, is overwhelming.
Critics argue that he tries to outshine the predecessor by cramming in too many details, too many subplots, at the expense of the overall pacing.
You have a million different viewpoints, the remembrancers, the iterators, the various legion captains, when the reader really just wants to focus entirely on the War Master's soul.
And that sprawling focus leads directly to the most famous, or perhaps infamous, criticism of the novel, the critique known as the yin-yang pancake.
The yin-yang pancake. I love this phrase so much.
Explain what the literary critics mean by this, because it strikes right at the heart of Horus's character arc.
The phrase perfectly captures the feeling that Horus's turn to chaos was entirely too binary, too sudden. Imagine a pancake. One side is pure golden loyalty, the enlightened, noble statesman.
Flip it over, and the other side is black, utterly evil treachery.
There is no gradient, there is no gray area. Many readers felt that his flip from the loyal war master to an evil usurper willing to enthusiastically murder his own sons was uncharacteristically fast.
They wanted a slower, more gradual, agonizing descent into darkness.
They wanted a slow roast, a complex tragic arc, and instead they got a microwave dinner.
It's like he goes into the tent, has a really bad dream, wakes up, and immediately says, all right, time to burn down the galaxy and murder Garviel Loken.
Exactly. Critics argue that a mind as brilliant, experienced, and resilient as Horus's shouldn't have been so easily tricked, even by supernatural forces wearing his dead friend's face.
The brevity of the actual corruption process makes him seem naive, or, as we discussed with the hot-headed critique, just throwing a narcissistic tantrum.
But I want to push back on the negativity for a second. Despite all these structural flaws, the pacing issues, the clunky prose, the sudden pancake flip of his morality, there is a point that I think is really profound, and it saves the book.
The overriding theme of the novel is the tragedy of fratricide, and the book absolutely nails this feeling.
It truly does. The core emotional weight of the novel isn't just about one man turning bad, it's about the shattering of a family.
The Mournival, this brotherhood that represented the absolute best of humanity, the pinnacle of loyalty and fraternity, is permanently, violently fractured.
You watch Abaddon and Aximand align with the darkness, while Loken and Torgaden desperately cling to the light.
These Astartes are forced to look at their brothers, the men they've bled with for centuries across countless worlds, and realize they're going to have to kill them. It echoes historical tragedies like Julius Caesar and Brutus or the American Civil War.
Even when you know exactly how a historical event ends, like watching a movie about the Titanic, a good story makes you believe, just for a second, that it might miss the iceberg.
This book achieves that tragic tension perfectly. You read Loken trying to reason with Horus, and it breaks your heart because you desperately want it to work, even though you know, historically, lore-wise, he absolutely cannot succeed.
That tragic tension is the defining value of the book. The summary consensus of the literary critiques is highly accurate. The novel is full of flaws, but for a sequel, it's worth the money.
It successfully interweaves a complex political scheme that destroys a galaxy. It is messy, it is rushed in places, but the emotional payload, the death of brotherhood, delivers a devastating blow.
Okay, let's unpack everything we've covered and bring it all home. We set out on a mission today to understand how a single domino brought down a golden age.
We saw a society that was incredibly vulnerable, stripped of its father figure, its spiritual defenses shattered by the Interrex, trying to navigate a terrifying, demon-haunted universe with nothing but the brittle shield of brutal realism.
We met a Machiavellian architect in Erebus who didn't just build a physical trap with the anathema, but a psychological one tailored perfectly to wounded pride.
We witnessed that unyielding pride lead a demigod into a diseased swamp, resulting in a supernatural wound that rational medical science couldn't touch.
And we saw how the blinding desperation of his sons led them to hand his soul over to the warp, where he was manipulated by visions of a dark future into committing the ultimate galaxy-burning betrayal.
And despite the mixed reviews and the sudden yin-yang flip of his character, the tragedy of brothers preparing to slaughter brothers leaves a lasting, devastating impact. The X-ray might be murky, but the patient, the Imperium of Man, is definitively terminal. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We've covered a massive amount of ground today, from the nuances of Astartes' psycho-indoctrination to the sympathetic magic of supernatural traps.
But before we go, I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over. Something that builds purely on the tragic, paradoxical irony of what Horus was shown in that temple on Davin.
Horus was pushed to rebellion because Erebus showed him a terrifying future. A 40th millennium shrine world where the emperor is fanatically worshipped as a god, where the secular truth is dead and humanity lives in misery.
But here's something to think about. If Horus rebelled specifically to prevent that future from happening, could it be that his very act of betrayal and the devastating, galaxy-spanning civil war that followed is exactly what destroyed the secular imperium, traumatized humanity beyond repair, and caused that dark, fanatical future to become a reality?
Did his attempt to destroy the nightmare actually create it?
A self-fulfilling prophecy of truly galactic proportions.
It really makes you question the nature of destiny, the danger of absolute certainty, and who is truly pulling the strings in the dark. Keep questioning the stories you read. Keep looking for the hidden machinery behind the plot, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.